A couple of weeks ago we were down in the Kasilof River and we got quite a few reds, not a ton, but probably enough for a year. One of the tasks that always follows harvesting salmon is canning and smoking salmon. And so got our canner set up here, got a smoker set up over here, and now we're going to prep fish for that process. And when I think about salmon, I kind of think about them in three pieces. If you picture a fillet, and we'll show this a little bit later on, you picture a fillet, the front half of the fillet toward the gill plates has bones in it. And so I cut it right at the dorsal fin, and then the back half of it, the tail, has no bones in it. And so that's really good, I think, for eating and for the table. But the front half of it, where there are bones and stuff, I like to can the belly part of it, or the bottom part of it, and that thick flank part I'll smoke. And so we'll go ahead and take a look at this process. So normally what I'd do is I'd cut that right by the dorsal fin. There's not a bone in this piece here, and that makes really good on your table then. And then this part has pin bones in it all the way through here. We'll look at those. Put this in the sun so you can see it. These are bellies that have been done. And see that here I've skinned down, and then I'm putting flesh against flesh here, and then the next layer will be skin against skin and flesh against flesh until you run out of space. And then we'll put brine on. Finished putting the fish in the cooler. Got a pile of skin there. We're going to use that for halibut bait later on, or halibut chum. And we've got a whole bucket of stuff that we're going to put in jars. For tonight, we're just going to put saran wrap on that and put it in the refrigerator, just because the smoking process probably takes a whole day, and so you got lots of spare time to do other things, so we'll can while we're doing that, but that'll become a separate video. Alright, so we're going to mix up some brine in a minute, and we'll put brine on here. We'll talk about brine when we get there. Okay, so I have our brine mixed up. For this brine, I'm going to put 2 gallons of brine in here, and for every gallon of water, I put 2 cups of salt, non-iodized salt, and 2 cups of brown sugar. And so the thing about brine is it's going to add flavor, but it also helps preserve your meat. Sugar and salt both help inhibit the growth of bacteria, and so that's part of the process, or part of what the brine's supposed to do. But then it'll also help dehydrate down. The salt will dehydrate the meat just a little bit, even though it's in a fluid. So this is a wet brine. People do dry brines. And so I put that in there. I'm going to leave this on brine for about 18 hours. Now what you see is the fish are trying to float up in that brine. And so I have these bottles of water that I took the labels off of. Washed, of course, because this is food. And I've frozen them solid. And so they're full of ice. And so not only will they help hold the fish down in the water, but they're also going to keep everything cold overnight. So our fish has been sitting on brine for 24 hours now. So we're in the process, we're rinsing it off, so that, because some of it will have more salt or more sugar on it than other parts, so we give it one rinse, and then we set it on here. And you can already tell that it's a lot firmer, so that stuff is kind of condensed or shrunken up. It's taking some of the moisture out of it. And so we're going to go ahead and finish putting these out on this, and we're going to let them air dry for a little bit. Part of what we're trying to do is dehydrate this fish in this process, and so if we're going to let it air dry, we want to give it the best start we can, so we're going to get as much of this water off of here as possible. So we're going to just pat them dry. We're going to set it out, put a fan on it, and let the fan blow on it for a couple hours. And then we'll put a base on top of it, and then dry that as well, and then it'll go in the smoker. So we still got a couple steps before we really get to smoking. Right, so I've taken the fish off brine, I've rinsed them off with clean water, and what that kind of does is it makes sure that it gets any extra salt or something off of them and makes sure that they're uniform. And so the salt has actually, let's see if we can see this, it's firmed up that flesh a lot. You can see the pen bones kind of sticking out there a little bit better now, and so that's from that meat shrinking up. And so we've had them on brine for 24 hours, taken them off brine. We have rinsed them off, put them on grates,
put it on paper, just newspaper because it's easy. I have a fan blowing on it, and I'm going to leave this fan on there for about 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours, so that it dries these out. And once that gets done, then I'll go ahead and put some baste on it, dry the baste out, and we'll put it in the smoker.
Okay, so now we're going to make our glaze that we're going to put on top of our fish. The fish has been drying for about an hour, and it's about time to put the glaze on. So I have some brown sugar in here. I'm going to add just enough Yukon Jack so that I can stir it into a solution that I can paint on, basically. That's still a little thick. And so in the process of smoking this, the heat over time is going to basically evaporate all the alcohol off, so it's just going to leave this flavor left in there. And everybody kind of has their signature, this is how I smoke my fish, you know, because I think smoking fish is kind of like artwork. And so everybody has their little secret tricks that they don't tell anybody. This is one that we've used for a long time and really like. And so this will glaze on top of the fish, kind of hold some of the moisture in, and then obviously add some flavor to it. Yukon Jack kind of has an orangish flavor. It's a liqueur, kind of a liqueur flavor. It's 100 proof, but again, the alcohol is going to burn off. So this is a nice consistency. There's still a lot of brown sugar in there, but it's now kind of suspended in this solution. And so we're going to go glaze the fish with it now. So I have my glaze here, just made up, and just going to paint it on. I like to get it on there kind of thick. You'll probably notice since the last time you saw this fish, I put it onto grates that'll go right in the smoker. And you can see that this flesh is really firmed up nicely, and you can kind of even see the water's evaporated off of it, and it looks like it's got a bit of a glaze on it already. This is the first glaze that I put on it though. And I'm just going to paint it on real thick. Some of it's going to run off. That's fine, that's just how it goes. We'll go ahead and I've turned the fan off so that just so you can kind of hear me talking a little bit. Put the fan back on this and get this glaze to go ahead and kind of cure on here before we put them in the smoker. So I'm going to go ahead and continue here, and we'll just fast forward through so you don't have to watch the whole thing. Okay, a couple things I didn't mention before. I have sorted these fish by size. You can see that these are like medium size, these are medium size, these are medium, these are smaller, and these are real thick ones here. The thick ones I'm going to put on the bottom, and I'll end up rotating the racks as they go through. Something else I did is I went ahead and sprayed all these racks with like a PAM kind of non-stick thing so that the skin doesn't stick to them so much. And now I'm going to put crushed red peppers on top of this, and you know, a lot of people think, oh, that's going to be super hot and it might scare them a little bit. I would encourage you, if you're going to try this, to at least do some with this. What ends up happening in the cooking process is the heat really goes out of these red peppers, and it kind of leaves a little twang on top of the fish. And so, you know, if you're a little afraid of it, I would say try some, but don't do them all that way. But I would really encourage you to try a little bit, because I think that you'll really like it. So I'm going to go ahead and finish these up all. I'm prepping my smoker, and I got wood chips in there on top of a burner. And then the first piece that goes on, this is a plate that kind of diffuses the smoke and the heat, so you don't get heat going right on the fish too much. And if you've never covered your bottom plate like that with tin foil, you know why I covered it with tin foil. It'll just become a gross sticky mess. Alright, so I've transferred all my fish into the smoker. I'm going to start, if you get down here, I'm going to start with alder chips. And generally I'll run 4 to 5 batches of smoke on this. And the first 3 of them I will use alder wood, and then the last 1 or 2 I'll use mesquite. Mesquite adds just a little bit of a bite to it. It just changes that last little bit of flavor. I've done them with all mesquite before, and I think it comes out a little too harsh. And so I like the alder to start with. So we're going to go ahead and put the lid on this and put a cover over it to hold the smoke in. And in 90 minutes we'll come back and we're going to change the chips. So we've put our fish in the smoker here. You can see down in the bottom I have a hot plate. On that hot plate I have a pan full of chips, and then there's a plate right here that's there, and I've covered that in tin foil so that when drippings come down it just makes it easy to clean up. I've put the biggest fish fillets that we talked about earlier on the bottom, and then progressively smaller, and the thinnest ones are up here. This smoker will hold 10 racks. I only have 5 racks of fish, and so I've put I've taken one rack and I've just covered it with tin foil here to help hold the heat down, so that hopefully this will get done a little bit faster. Usually when I do this, depending on the humidity and the temperature outside, it can take up to 24 hours or as little as 10 hours. Every time I do it, I hope for 10 hours. It always takes longer than that. Alright, we'll show you, as we move along in the process, we'll show you the stages here. So we've had our smoker going here about 90 minutes. I like to change the wood chips on it every 90 minutes. For this very first 90 minutes, I put a cover on it to insulate the cover, because the first part we want to get all of the meat up to temperature. So we're going to go ahead and pull the cover off. We'll pull one rack out, and we'll go ahead and take a look at it, and we'll change the chips in it and put it back together. Okay, we've got the smoker going. We're getting ready to change the chips on it. While we're doing this, we're also doing a little canning. That's a separate video that you can watch if you're interested in canning. Let's take a look and see how our fish is coming. Okay, so you can see it's starting to turn colors. It's wet on the top. It's only been in here for about an hour right now, so we got quite a bit of time left. But as we go through this process, we'll look at it and we'll touch it and we'll see what it feels like and stuff. Right now it should still be firm, and it is. It's still very, very firm. Alright, so this is the rack of small fish, and you can see that really not a whole lot has changed. It looks the same temperature, or it looks the same color. It's about the same size, and to the touch, it's almost at body temperature now. So we're a long ways away from being done. We're going to go ahead and put this back in, change the chips, look at it again in 2 hours. All right, it's been about 3 hours so far. Now you can see they're starting to get a little toasty looking, and now what's happened is they've puffed up. Look at this. Before that was firm, and now as it's starting to cook, it kind of puffs up. So we're going to change the chips on this, even though there's good smoke coming out of there, and we'll give it another 90 minutes. Okay, we're about 4 hours into the process. You can see that it's still pretty spongy, lots of oil in there. I think of it lots of times when I'm cooking fish like it's toast, and what I want to see is it start kind of turning golden brown, and we're way ahead of that. We're way away from that yet, and so we're on the way, but we still got a little bit of time left. Okay, we've been going for about 5 hours now. You can see now they're still, see, they're spongy still. They got a ways to go. I'm going to change the wood chips and let them sit there a bit longer. Okay, we're 6 hours in now, and it's pretty spongy. So we're still, but you can tell by the color of it that it is coming along. We got a little bit more to go. Okay, we're several hours in now. It's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You can see this piece right here. This part is done, but this part is still squishy. That's not done. So this piece needs to stay in here, but a piece like this one, this is done the whole way. Like this one here, that's done the whole way. And so we'll have to check every piece in here and take out the ones that are done. Okay, so we got everything done. Put it on paper. We got the fan blowing on it. Let's turn the fan off here. And the next step is, or the last step actually, is to vacuum pack it. And so we're using a commercial grade vacuum packer. We put 2 pieces in a bag, close the lid, push the button. This is kind of cool here. I don't know if you can see it, the bag's all puffed up.
what's happening is it's sucking all the air out of this entire chamber, so there's no air left inside of there. So there's no air in the bag, even though you can see that that bag's all puffed up. And now it's sealing it. And then it put air back into the thing, and you can tell that it went from being puffed up bag to nice and tight. That's the finished product right there. And then we'll be able to freeze that and take it out, and it'll be fine for a year, actually even 2 years. Today we're going to make a pasta salad with some pasta, smoked salmon, sun-dried tomatoes, cod mullet olives, and some virgin olive oil. We got the pasta there. I got the salmon in there. This is pretty simple. Sun-dried tomatoes.